You're watching Radioactive right here on YouTube. My name is Victoria. With me right now, I got Brenden from Coherency. How are you doing, Brenden?
I'm doing awesome. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. So let's just start off by talking about your guys' newest album that you released, Zero Sum. Kind of take me through the process of recording this album and just kind of what it was like.
Yeah, so it started a long time ago. Long as in, a couple of years kind of thing. So we kind of rode the wave of COVID and really took advantage, I guess, of things that enabled us to do it remotely at times. And sent things back and forth between Justin's house and my house and that kind of thing. So we really kind of pieced it together. Um, so kind of sporadic, just depends on kind of what was going on in the world at the time. And yeah, it took a long time, but I think it's better off for having taken the time.
Hmm. Right. And are you 100% happy with how this turned out, or would you go back and change some stuff on the album?
Okay, so here's a problem with being sort of a bit of a perfectionist at times is that when you hear something enough, you're always going to find some kind of issue in there.
Right.
And I think eventually you have to take a bit of a Bob Ross approach and just say it's a happy accident, leave it as is. And part of the pressure with that is sort of just the way that the industry is now, where even people recording in their basements and stuff expect perfection, and everybody does. And you can get pretty close. So I don't think we really had an awesome idea of what we wanted this to be. We had a bunch of material. We were kind of writing as we went. So I don't think I had a really good kind of idea of what I wanted it to be. Apart from a good rock record that had a little bit of aggression in it from time to time. And
Right.
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't change anything now. With the way that we do things, there's always something we could go back and be like, nah, that little thing's got to get tweaked, or there's one happy little accident that's no good and we should get rid of it. Um, but at some point you have to stop, and
Yeah.
that's probably a common issue is it's hard to stop.
Yeah. And looking
Um,
back at like all the tracks you recorded on this record, do you have a favorite one?
I think we all kind of have our favorites. I know Justin is pretty fond of temporal parts. Justin and I kind of share a lot of the sort of punk influences and some of that sort of thing. So I can appreciate his liking of that track. Um, I probably have several that would sort of rank in the top. I think Chris probably would choose Our Diseased Man. It's a little bit more of a metal kind of sound to it. Um, I think uh, probably um, One Got Away is one of my favorites, and probably mostly because not only do I think it's a reasonably good song, um, but there was a lot of input from everybody, and sort of the way that we write things sometimes is pretty linear, where someone will show up with a song and we just kind of learn the parts and play it. Um, where One Got Away was a lot more sort of interactive. We kind of jammed on it for a while. Everybody contributed little bits and had a lot of input into it. So um, I think that's going to influence sort of the way that we do things kind of going forward. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I think the sort of more the collaborative songwriting is probably one of my kind of favorite things with that.
Yeah. And going back just a little bit, you said that you have lots of like punk influences. What kind of bands would you say influence you and your style of writing and singing?
Well, I think like the early, early Nirvana influences of punk are some of that. I think Justin and I share the Rancid kind of influence. For myself, probably mostly on sort of bass guitar parts. Um, I'm a pretty big fan of Bad Religion. Some of the bigger ones like NoFX and um, uh, Rise Against that sort of thing. Um,
Mhm.
so a little bit, I think it's a good outlet for a little bit of aggression, and sometimes it's nice to kind of sort of switch back and forth in terms of mindset when we're writing things about, not getting too complicated or too pretentious or whatever, and just kind of let's just play some songs and so punk is such a great thing for that.
Yeah. And would you say like those bands would kind of what kind of bands would you say define like the sound of Coherency that kind of influence the band as a whole?
Well, I think the 90s grunge kind of thing is definitely a big chunk of that. We all kind of grew up listening to that. I think, for kind of where we're at now, I think we kind of branch out a little bit more here and there, a little bit more metal and maybe a little bit more punk from time to time. Some just sort of straight up kind of rock sounds and that kind of stuff. Um, it's kind of as much as it's a fairly kind of cohesive and sort of um, sort of straight ahead sound as it normally as Coherency kind of tends to be. I think there's a lot of stuff kind of in the background that sort of, even if it doesn't influence it so much, I think it informs sort of the way that we do things. And a lot of it's probably not super obvious, but um, there's a lot of probably metal influence that doesn't really come across in the
Right.
music, um, or even in the lyrics or that sort of thing. But it's definitely there.
Yeah.
Eric and I are big kind of metal fans for sure.
Yeah. Well, and all that takes in that is just kind of taking like a metal guitar riff and just kind of dialing it back a little bit too.
Yeah, there's all kinds of ways that you can treat things, and
Just tone it down a
I
bit.
would say only in the last maybe year or two have I found the gain knob on all of my guitar pedals, because it never made sense to me for the first however many years I've been playing why there's even a setting for the gain to be less than full blast.
Hmm.
Um, so even at that, like it was always just 100% as loud and aggressive as I could get. So I think we're maybe playing with it a little bit more.
Yeah.
And you'll hear kind of things like that, like in a song like Linkrot, where it kind of builds up with various sort of levels of crunch and that sort of thing. Um, Getting back to the favorite songs, I think I'd be remiss without talking about Automaton. It was the lead song on the record, the lead video, and I think for good reason. It's got a good sort of punk feel to it, um, and the way that we kind of did the music video, it allowed for, let's say, some freedom of expression. I think we're as serious as we kind of take the music at times. Um, I think that kind of shows a kind of what we're really about.
Yeah.
Like the music industry is pretty brutal at times,
Yeah.
especially if this is like your kind of primary gig, and so it's a pretty hard thing to make a run at. So
Hmm.
um, sort of that commercialism and stuff, and sort of playing to whatever's popular at the time.
Yeah.
We had a lot of fun with that for sure.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like you have to have fun with what you're making too, or else you take all the fun out of it and you don't enjoy it anymore, right?
Yeah, for sure. Um, and that's kind of part of the thing about the recording process, is that for, the 5% of the time that it's, really inspiring, and you get a really good sense of satisfaction out of it. There's 90% of the time where it's just tedious, and there's just no way around that.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, just going back, just how did you get into music? Just what got you into it? What inspired you to start singing or playing guitar, or whatever you kind of got into first?
Yeah. So I went to, there's probably two things. Um, I went to like a grade 9, like orientation in high school, where they like take you in and try to make you not as nervous going to the big high school and stuff. And we're in this cafeteria area, and there was a guy, I don't know why, but he had a guitar and an amp there, and he started to play Smells Like Teen Spirit. And it had never occurred to me that anyone could take an instrument and make it sound just like you're hearing on a radio,
Yeah.
because that's what there was at the time. And I was like, wow, that's bananas. How does he even do that? And so that sort of started it. But I think what really kind of sealed the deal was a friend of mine who didn't play guitar. He got shown a guitar part by another guy who did play a guitar. And this is probably, I was like 14, 15. And then my dad happened to have a guitar kicking around. And so he started showing me this riff, and it was Enter Sandman.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like a eureka moment where it's like, man, you could make a guitar sound like anything now. Whatever you hear, you could make it sound like that.
Yeah.
And so that was just like, that sort of sealed the deal, where it's like, okay, well, I can play that riff now. Now what's next?
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of like sort of early days of tab on the internet and stuff, and just kind of dug in and sort of went crazy from there. Kind of went through sort of the whole like Jimi Hendrix and all that sort of stuff, and yeah, and then just kind of expanded out from there. Eventually started writing stuff, but yeah, it probably wasn't. It was probably 15 years before, seriously getting into writing music in any amount of seriousness, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of how all the other guys kind of got into it too. They just it sort of was something that they sort of seeked out, and we all kind of started as guitar players, and then eventually somebody had to do something else. Or like, okay, well, you like to bang on things, so you go play drums, and
Yeah.
well, we need a bass player, so somebody's gonna need to go play bass. So we tried to recruit another guy. Our artistic coordinator is Dukes, and we tried to get him to play, and he played with us for a little bit, but it wasn't his bag.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's something we all kind of fell into. Some of the guys knew each other from sort of high school days, and then I kind of met them later on, and we all kind of had the same sort of musical influences and interests and stuff. And like, we should at least play together
Yeah.
and see where it goes. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And what do you like most about making music? Is it like the writing, the recording, or do you like playing shows?
Um, I
Or a bit of
think,
everything?
I think all of it, but um, I think once things are written, they're recorded. I think that's kind of you know, where we can take that material and say, hey, let's go play it for people. So I would say that's probably the most fun. I think it's different levels of kind of like satisfaction, or that kind of thing. Like the writing phase, you really get to kind of play around with different ideas, and um, you sort of bounce things around, and you get to take your time with that. Um, and in the studio, it's a little bit more subdued at times, and you're just kind of doing piece by piece and kind of building up a thing, and it might be really aggressive at the end of it. but it's not really cohesive um, until you get on a stage with the rest of the guys and the rest of the bands you're playing with, and you really get to like kind of let loose. So I think shows are probably the the biggest thing that I miss over the last year and a half, really. So hopefully that comes back soon.
Right. And not being able to play shows probably kind of makes the motivation maybe go away a little bit because you don't have that crowd response to what you're playing. Like, is that kind of a factor maybe too?
I think so. Like it's just fun to be out there. And if people listen and pay attention to what's going on, all the better. I think it's just fun to kind of be out there and um, just having a good time. I don't think we take ourselves too seriously on stage or anything like that,
Yeah.
or in life, and hopefully that kind of comes across.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if anything, it allowed us some freedom of, I don't know, time or whatever, to be able to just kind of like play with the album for a long time and kind of build it up and think about different things. And so we had that luxury this time around where I didn't feel like there was like an incessant amount of pressure or anything, which is all just like something we make up anyway, because it's not like there's a bunch of labels just like banging down the door being like, where's your next album, dude?
Yeah. Right. And for the amount of time that you've been a musician, whether it's being with Coherency or just like starting as a musician, do you have any like favorite moments in your music career? I guess you put it that way. Like maybe a certain song you recorded you're really proud of, or you played like a great show that you just remember.
Yeah, I think every show, because we don't play like a huge amount of shows. There's just not that many kind of venues around town. So they're a little bit sporadic in that. Um, so I think every show with Coherency has been in my mind a little bit memorable. Whether it's sort of the variety of the bands that we're playing with, um, or that sort of thing. Um, I think we so I a very long time ago I played a show at the Turvey Center. It was actually kind of a work function, and so it was for several hundred people, and definitely the biggest show that I had played at that point. Um, so that was an interesting sort of foray into that. Um, but probably one of the most kind of memorable shows was we played a block party a couple of years ago, and one of the neighbors brought in a bunch of like flatbed trailers and stuff. So we made this like two-tier stage out of it, and kind of played there until the cops came, even though they had a permit and stuff. Um, anyway, that was a really good time. We got to sort of do a bit of an acoustic show at the beginning. And I don't know if I probably shouldn't let the cat out of the bag here, but we do have we'll call them alter egos, where we'll kind of switch up the instrumentation, and we call ourselves El Nirvania, and we're kind of like a Nirvana cover band at that point. So if you ever see a poster with Coherency and El Nirvania, it's two completely different bands. You wouldn't even recognize them. Anyway, so El Nirvania got to play that show too. It was pretty fun.
Yeah. And like you mentioned before, you like a lot of punk bands. So I really like to ask this question to you. If you could play like a dream show anywhere with anybody, who would it be and where would it be?
Well, um, I think there's a lot of bands that I would like to play with. Um, a bunch of us are kind of big Faith No More fans, and if you ever watch any of their concert footage and stuff, uh, sometimes Mike Pat just goes and does a bunch of crazy stuff, and it's hilarious. So I would love to be on the sidelines of that. Um, yeah, love to play alongside Bad Religion or that sort of thing. I think that, especially, sort of the old kind of skate punk bands, sort of have this sort of sense of kind of reckless abandon that I enjoy.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, just if to pick a dream lineup, I mean, some of the bands are probably dead by now. Most of
Yeah.
them, really, from the grunge era, are kind of gone, which is unfortunate. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, I'd say definitely Faith No More. And they're current, so we could actually play with them. I'd love to open for them. That'd be fun.
Mhm. Yeah. Cool. So I just got one more question for you. So what is next for Coherency? Kind of what do you guys got for future plans?
Yeah. Um, so we've been, even though we released our album Zero Sum in May, that was still sort of kind of pretty peak time of the pandemic here. So, and everybody's sick of hearing about it and talking about it and stuff. Um, but we thought, let's just put it out. I know we can't really do much in terms of live shows or that sort of thing. But we're really excited to get it out there. So coming out October is kind of the target for a proper release show. So just working on some details for that. Um, and and hopefully throughout kind of 2022 we'll do some more shows locally, and we might kind of go around Saskatchewan a little bit here and there. We'll see how it goes. One of the things in terms of sort of the writing thing is it kind of just doesn't stop. And as a bit of an outlet, primarily for Justin and myself, that kind of thing just sort of doesn't quit.
Right.
It goes in fits and spurts sometimes, but it doesn't quit entirely. So we're just kind of putting together a bunch of ideas for kind of what the next album is going to look like. We have sort of some unreleased material that will kind of look either later on this year or probably early 2022. Kind of a bit of an EP sort of thing. And I'm not sure when, but there is a special mix of More Than This that we'll release at some point. It's just got a couple of little tweaks that are pretty fun. And then I guess once we kind of feel like we've got enough to kind of start with, then we'll kind of start putting together the pieces for the next album. Because I just I don't see that ever stopping. Like we'll just keep going
Yeah.
until we run completely out of ideas, and then we'll just change genres and go to like EDM or something like that.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for doing an interview today.
Well, thanks for having me.